When Lucy, I call the thing that was before us Lucy because it bore her shape, saw us, she drew back with an angry snarl such as a cat gives when taken unawares. Then her eyes ranged over us, Lucy's eyes in form and color, but Lucy's eyes unclean and full of hellfire instead of the pure, gentle orbs we knew. At that moment, the remnant of my love passed into hate and loathing. Had she then to be killed, I could have done it with savage delight. As she looked, her eyes blazed with unholy light, and the face became wreathed with a voluptuous smile. Oh God, how it made me shudder to see it! With a careless motion, she flung to the ground, callous as a devil, the child that up to now she had clutched strenuously to her breast, growling over it as a dog growls over a bone. The child gave a sharp cry, and then lay there moaning. There was a cold-bloodedness in the act which wrung a groan from Arthur. When she advanced to him with outstretched arms and a wanton smile, he fell back and hid his face in his hands. Still she advanced, however, with a languorous, voluptuous grace, said, "Come to me, Arthur. Leave these others and come to me. My arms are hungry for you. Come and we may rest together. Come, my husband. Come." There was something diabolically sweet in her tones, something of the tingling of glass when struck, which rang through the brains of even us who heard the words addressed to another. As for Arthur, he seemed under a spell. Moving his hands from his face, he opened wide his arms. She was leaping for them when Van Helsing sprang forward and held between them his little golden crucifix. She recoiled from it, and with a suddenly distorted face full of rage, dashed past him as if to enter the tomb. When within a foot or two of the door, however, she stopped, as if arrested by some irresistible force. Then she turned. Her face was shown in the clear burst of moonlight, and by the lamp, which had now no quiver from Van Helsing's iron nerves. Never did I see such baffled malice on a face, and never, I trust, shall such ever be seen again by mortal eyes. The beautiful color became livid. The eyes seemed to throw out sparks of hellfire. The brows were wrinkled as though the folds of flesh were the coils of Medusa's snakes, and the lovely, blood-stained mouth grew to an open square as in the passion masks of the Greeks and Japanese. If ever a face meant death, if looks could kill, we saw it at that moment. Dr. Seward's Diary. Welcome, my friends, to the Dracula Podcast. Welcome to the Dracula Podcast, once again with Frank Stella, where we are critically analyzing and analytically comparing the 1897 novel Dracula by Bram Stoker to the television series on NBC by that same title. Frank Stella with you once again, and I'm so glad to be here, and this is kind of a special episode. We have a guest host on with me. It's Zachary Hare, who is a big fan of the Dracula NBC series so far. Zach, how you doing?
Great to be here, Frank, and hopefully if the fans like me, I'll become a regular co-host.
Maybe if I like you.
Well,
I don't care. I don't care about the fans. It's
that's nice to say.
I just have to like you. That's all.
Fans, I don't care what you think. I'm doing what I want.
You know, that's kind of been the theme of this podcast. I'm just kind of talking, and if anybody else wants to join me, that's awesome. That's kind of like, this isn't one of those give the people what they want things. It's more like give whoever wants to listen what they want and see how it goes. And I don't mind. I'm just having fun. I'm just talking, and whoever wants to listen in or join me, cool. And there have been a couple people who have gotten in on the discussion a little bit on the iTunes or emails. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. So, there's a lot of ways to join the discussion. And that's what I love about the internet. It's just like a big old forum. I love it. So, Zach, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you? What are you doing? What are you up to? What are you into?
I'm a fan of fantasy and adventure, so that's why I'm such a huge fan of this Dracula show. When I first heard about this, I groaned because I'm like, oh god, Dracula, they're gonna ruin him, they're gonna weaken him, they're gonna make him silly. I was really surprised because they haven't done any of that.
And what do you like so far that they have done?
They've taken every character into, like, Renfield's not a pathetic little wasteland. Dracula's got his own style to him, and Mina, of course, they're doing great with him. And Helsing, well, they've turned him into 1A.
And what exactly are you comparing in your mind to when you were worried about Dracula, or when you were worried about Renfield being weak or something? Like, it seems like you're thinking of something in your mind. What exactly are you comparing this to?
Let's just say it. Twilight. Twilight almost killed the vampire mythos, and so many other vampire shows. It's like Oh, and Vampire Diaries, like there's just like every vampire is like a GQ model perfect and like just airbrushed. It's just and not in my opinion not cool.
Okay. But now, are you really worried about them ruining the vampire genre? Because I really don't think that those particular adaptations, I don't even really call them adaptations because they're not Dracula, but even those vampire themes, those vampire legends, if you will, I don't see them standing the test of time nearly as well as Dracula has, especially what with, Bela Lugosi's performance or portrayal of him in, 1931. I mean, those are things that are really going to be just iconic for, decades and decades. And so I'm really not too worried when, these Twilight things happen. And really, it's more kids that are into them than anyone else. And I just feel like I don't think these things are going to stand the test of time.
Yes, you do have a good point, and that's one thing that gives me hope. I think, but I do believe like going Bela Lugosi, and I love. I mean, even though I love original Dracula, I especially liked when he met Abbott Costello as Dracula. That's just classic.
That was very cool. Yeah, that was a really interesting smash up of characters and of I don't know what's the word. It's like a smash up of thematics coming together
Yeah.
with like silliness, but also it's like how it's interesting to think of what would characters do if they were thrown together. And I think there could be some more of that going on in Hollywood, and that would make for some more interesting scenarios. The problem that I have really with the Dracula or really any vampire stories, but especially the Dracula adaptations, because they're using the name, they're using that Dracula piggybacking, I guess, off
I
of,
see.
classic Bram Stoker's novel, and nobody ever has gotten it right. I mean, I love Bela Lugosi's performance. I love his I love the way he portrayed Dracula as a personality and as a figure. But really, that whole script was just kind of jacked up. The characters were misplaced in a lot of ways. It didn't follow the original story very well. It did in some ways, but it was weird. There's been other really cheesy and bad Dracula adaptations that I don't even want to get into, but there's been a few other notable ones like Francis Ford Coppola, which was actually called Bram Stoker's Dracula, which was a horrible thing to call it because that was just a failure as a title. It was misnamed, really. That movie was actually closer to what's going on in this show, in that you've got Dracula who ends up kind of having this crush on Mina, and Mina looks identical to Dracula's old wife, and so that's what kind of draws him to her. And Mina somehow randomly falls for him, even though she knows that he was the one that killed Lucy, and that he's some inhuman creature, demonic spiritual entity. But she falls in love with him anyway for like no reason. It was just terrible, and didn't follow the book really nearly closely enough. And I mean, I hate to be one of those people that's like a huge stickler because I know you can't put everything in a book on a screen cleanly. I'm a big fan of the Lord of the Rings movie series, and most people who like the books are also into the movies. So I think Peter Jackson did a relatively good job bringing that to screen, but I feel like no one ever even tries to get Dracula right, and it just gets to me.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Frank, about you know, adaptations. Like I think one adaptation that I thought was okay at first, but then on rewatch I realized how bad it was Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman.
Uh-huh.
That Dracula, I don't know what the heck they were going for in the adaptations of the monsters in that one.
They did some weird stuff there too. Wasn't Frankenstein part of that
I actually
story?
liked that's the one thing I liked. I liked their take on Frankenstein. He had a really interesting design to him.
That was an interesting design, but I think when you talk about the thematics of a story, that's more to it than the way you make someone look,
Yeah, oh
which is
yeah.
why I love Bela Lugosi, but I just didn't like the movie in general because they just messed with things so much. Yeah, that was a weird. Van Helsing was weird. Van Helsing is a character who is kind of the antithesis of Dracula in a lot of ways. He's portrayed as more of like a huntsman in that particular story than like more of like a scientist where he is in Bram Stoker's book. He's younger. I don't know. He's more gunslinging, it seems, in that particular movie. And Dracula was kind of weird. The vampires themselves were kind of weird. I don't think they did justice to the way that when a vampire dies, there's a big deal made in the book about how their soul is released and there's a look of peace that comes over their face, and it kind of gives you a good feeling after the whole ordeal. With what went on in Van Helsing, that when they killed those vampires, it just looked just nothing but horrible and brutal, and it was, I don't know, it just didn't leave you feeling with any kind of sense of redemption or reward for your effort. I felt, and I just thought, that's something that's missing. I don't know. That was one thing that got to me. But that movie, I don't think was horrible. They were just doing some weird kind of experimental things. Who did that again? It was Stephen
Yeah,
Summers.
Summers. Ugh. He's a very much a hit or miss director, and he hasn't made really. He hasn't made a good movie in a while.
What would you say was good? Like The Mummy?
That was his most passable movie. Yeah, because GI Joe just makes me mad.
I actually felt that The Mummy and Van Helsing had a similar feel to them. Like I almost thought, like, I forget the guy's name in The Mummy, but I just felt like he had almost the exact same attitude
Yeah.
as Hugh Jackman did in Van Helsing. I was like, are these the same guys? They almost seem
It
like
could be that I like the actors themselves more than I like the action. I mean, there was I'm a big fan of like most of the actors in that movie.
Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah, well, I meant The Mummy, but yeah.
Oh,
Kate Beckinsale. Oh, Kate Beckinsale is pretty good. Although lately,
yep.
I don't know what she's been doing.
I haven't even
You
tried.
know, there's a new Frankenstein movie coming out.
Is there? I feel like I heard about that.
Frankenstein's by actually it's by the underworld people, and it looks ridiculous, but in a good way.
Okay, you know what? Yeah, I'm pretty sure I saw the trailer for that in Catching Fire. So that looked kind of interesting. I haven't actually read Frankenstein. I've kind of been meaning to because it seems like something that I
I
may or may
have.
not enjoy. I'm not a big reader, which is interesting because I'm just normally not a big book person. So that's why I talk about when I'm really into Dracula, there's something to that because coming from a guy who's normally not into books so much, I really like this book, Dracula, and I really recommend it to anybody and everybody. So that's my stance there. So Zach, what do you think of this series? Do you think it's going to continue on for a while? Do you think it's going to be dead on the tracks pretty soon? The ratings are up again this past week, so they've been up since Thanksgiving. Before Thanksgiving, TVByTheNumbers.com predicted that this season or this series wasn't going to get renewed for a new season. What do you think?
I'm really impressed by the show. I've yet to see an episode that really made me go, "What are they doing?" Like, it's got great story arcs and amazing casting. I mean, I gotta admit, my favorite character gotta be Renfield. I could probably try to say. Do you know how to pronounce that actor's name? Or,
I probably would mess it up.
but yeah, people probably would know him from Game of Thrones and maybe even the Conan movie, which was a disappointment, but not because of him. But I just John Rhys Meyers. I never disliked him, but I was never a huge fan of him. But I think he's found a good niche with this character.
A niche?
I believe that's the word, or am I mispronouncing?
I say niche.
Ah.
I don't know. Maybe it's because you're from Boston.
What is with everyone? Just because I'm from Massachusetts, everyone's from Boston.
Well, it's such a small state, and what else does
It's
Massachusetts
not
have
that
going for it?
small.
I, Dude, I'm in Montana right now, and I can't see anything. I look out the window, and there's just nothing. It's just like a wilderness of nothing.
Well, I live in a small town, so it's a small town of nothing when I look out the window.
Okay. I don't know how we started talking about this. Jonathan Rhys Meyers has found a niche.
Yeah. I just like I've actually never watched The Tudors, so I got no base for that. The only thing I've only seen him in like August Rush and From Paris with Love, and from the ratings of that movie, I feel like I'm the only person who liked it.
Well, I have not seen any of those. So I'm new to Jonathan Rhys Meyers. I don't mind him as an actor. I don't mind him as Dracula. The thing that gets to me is that he's supposed to be an American. I don't get that. I mean, I'm not even sure if he's ever even been. Well, yeah, he had been to America based on a couple of those episodes, but he really didn't ever spend a whole lot of time in America that this show is letting us know about.
Well, he was there before he got to England. I'm not sure exactly how many years he was. I think in one episode, Jonathan Harker says before such and such, no one ever heard of Grayson. Yeah, I'm guessing in later episodes we'll learn more about like him and Van Helsing, or I don't know if Van Helsing went with him, but him coming to America. And it's more. I think it's basically just him establishing a different identity, and so no one will suspect who he really is.
Right. There's something to that. I just don't understand why it needs to be an American. Why can't it just be he's a guy who came from, East Europe?
Well, I think it's literally because, like they say, it's coming from the tier America is a great place to say, "Oh, I'm from here. Why are there no records? Because records suck around there right now."
Okay. Now, how do you feel about all the intrigue as far as the League of Dragons or what am I calling it the wrong thing again?
Order of the
Order.
Dragon.
Yeah, I was doing that in that first podcast. I call it the League of Dragons.
I was gonna say that sounds like a superhero team, the League of Dragons, and a ninja fighting force.
Right, you're right. And I'm also following the Agents of Shield show, so I got that on my mind, and I'm also thinking League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
No, it's funny. I saw League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, loved the movie, and then I read the book, and I'm like, wow, this is a horrible adaptation.
I saw the movie and I thought this is a really cool idea that they sort of really kind of made lame. I don't know why,
Have you
but
read the comics?
I'm not a big comic book person. I like the idea of comics and I like a lot of the stories, but I don't really read them.
I think it would have worked better as an animated film because it would make a better adaptation.
I don't mind the fact that it was a live action. I just felt like it got kind of lame. But it was a cool idea.
And it had,
But anyway,
of course, it had Mina in it.
it did have Mina in it, and she was like a vampire. And of course, I'm like, well, once again, they got this completely wrong.
And if you listen to the commentary, they actually addressed that. Actually, they said they don't care.
Who doesn't care about what?
The director doesn't care he got Mina wrong, like that she's supposed to be cured.
Oh yeah. Well, I could tell he doesn't care. He either didn't do research, which already means.
Well, she was cured in the comics.
Oh well, I don't know anything about the comics. I just know that she was cured in the book,
Yeah, I know.
and she was yeah. So I'm just going. He either didn't do his research, which means he didn't care by default, or he did and just didn't care.
Yeah.
So it's whatever. I just thought it was a lame movie.
Now,
Anyway,
the Order of the Dragon, secret societies. I mean, they are a pretty easy villain.
let me ask you this: are you able to follow really well the whole plot of everything going on there? I find it really tedious to keep up with. I can barely remember all these lords' names and what they're about and
The
who's
names
who.
are a bit hard to keep up with, but most of the story I am able to keep up with. Like they're the classic, people behind the veil thing, making the decisions that lead everything. And although one thing I like a little more clear on is like, are they psycho-religious? Like what I want to know more about what exactly they believe.
I can't even get that far because I'm telling you, like, I came back from Thanksgiving. I popped in the next episode, and it's like Jonathan's all, "Oh, looks like Shaw is taking bribes," and I'm just going like, "Ugh, who's Shaw? Why are we talking about this? Why does this matter?" I feel like as a fan, they're losing me, and they're losing maybe a lot of fans. Of course, the ratings picked up after Thanksgiving, so I don't know. I just felt like this is so hard to keep up with. They're talking about people who I don't have I haven't really seen. I don't have a face for. I don't understand who they are or what they're doing. I'm sure they mentioned it real quick, but to me as a fan, I'm more interested in the Jonathan and Mina thing. I'm more interested in Dracula as a vampire than Grayson as an entrepreneur. I'm more interested in the Huntsmen and what their vendetta against the vampires and any of this whole business world thing that's just kind of losing me. What do you think about all that?
I get what you mean. You want more of you want more Dracula.
I want more just in my mind. I've been likening it to Star Wars a little bit. I want a little more Empire versus Rebels than all this Senate and like all this like galactic federation-y thing, political, hard to follow. What? I just want like here's the good guys, here's the bad guys. Let's watch what they do.
I like the chess aspect of some of the stuff they do in the show. Like I love, like when Renfield got kidnapped. I thought that was a pretty good when he confronted the people that kidnapped Renfield. That part was so satisfying. The build of that, and I really like how he manipulates people to get his end game.
How Renfield does?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Dracula. How Dracula does it.
Okay.
And how he used his own man to get further into the into the woman's inner circle, to get her to trust him. Although that's one thing I'm a little curious about. They kind of mentioned it this episode, where how wouldn't she notice that he doesn't have a pulse?
You're talking about Lady Jane.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it, I'm kind of wondering how do I put this delicately? How can a vampire have sex?
Yeah, well, that's one of those things that I think depends on each individual adaptation. Like, how can a vampire do this when he can't do that? How can a vampire eat when he's not really alive? It's one of
Sure.
those things, you know. Like, I mean, if he doesn't have a heart, how does it? It's
Yeah.
most shows just say screw it and not even address it.
So yeah, there's things like that. When she noticed that he doesn't have a pulse, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're assuming that he does have a pulse, you're not like, oh, let me check, you know?
Wouldn't he not be breathing?
Yeah, I don't know.
She even says, "I've spent a lot of time with him. I would know if he's a vampire or not."
That there's something to that, I think, and I'll tell you in the book, Bram Stoker makes a point of making it feel really like eerie when you're in the room with Dracula because you almost like you see him there, you're talking with him, you have like a sense that you're the only person there in another way. You feel there's like a stillness to him. If you get close to him, he's supposed to kind of gross you out. He's supposed to make you feel uneasy, like something's off with this person. Maybe it's just his bad breath, or maybe it's just something weird. But there's scenes where Jonathan Harker, when he's in Dracula's castle, he'll feel like I'm in the room with him, but it just feels very still, almost like I'm actually the only one here. It's like a weird, off-putting sense. He's Dracula in the book. He's not somebody that you want to like cuddle up with and make out with, and who knows what else. He makes you feel uneasy and off-putting. How he seduces you is with his eyes. If he looks you in the face, you kind of get this like hypnotic thing going, which he has power over you then. But it's not like, oh, he's so hot, I want to jump in bed with him. It's not like that in the book.
Think about this episode, how it turned Dracula hired that invented the story about General Shaw. I'm a little confused about what the end game of that was. What was he testing Harker or what?
I don't know what he would have needed to test Harker for. I mean, he already trusts Harker.
That's what I'm confused about. Why would he do it? That's what I don't get.
He said something to Harker. He's like, I didn't want to ruin him. I just wanted to embarrass him.
But he invented the story.
Yeah.
That's why I don't get it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we'll get fleshed out the next episode. And another thing along those lines is I don't get why Lady J did what she did with Lucy.
That was something that I was really put off by, again, because first of all, I've been saying for a week or so now, I wonder what they're going to do with Lucy. She seems like a really kind of undeveloped character. She's there in every episode, but she's really has yet to do anything. She really has yet to be anybody. We find out tonight Lucy is either a lesbian or at least has some bisexual tendencies.
They implied throughout the whole series that she had very strong feelings. Although I think they were really pushing Mina's naivete. It's like, and she actually says to her, "Oh, you'll be married," and it's like, "Do you understand?" No, it's like she wants you.
Yeah, so I was a little bit. It's another thing where I'm going, this is weird to me. I can't get into this because the Lucy that I know and love was engaged to a man. And one thing that they're doing with this show is it seems like they're taking some moral standards that a lot of times are perceived as old-fashioned and like arguing against the fact that that is the right thing to do. So you have, even just in this episode, you have Mina and Jonathan basically sleeping together before they're married, and then Mina gives him this little speech in the morning about, what we did last night doesn't like affect the sacredness of our wedding vows. And it's like, okay, well, maybe not, but like, do we really need to have like a secular justification sermon for why you want to do what you want to do? And I've sensed that kind of going on a lot in this series, kind of off and on. And then next thing you know, you have Lady Jane saying, oh, like, yeah, the way you feel about this is like every woman feels like this. It's just...
I mean, because it makes because there is no end game for it. At most it might break up the friendship, which doesn't benefit. It hurt anyone she cares about. It doesn't benefit Lady Jan. So it makes, in my opinion, now if they implied that she, for the heck of it, wanted to play with Lucy, I guess the best term I can think of, I could maybe understand that. But really, it just seems. Felt forced, like you said. It felt just so they can have the scene where she goes, "Oh, it's natural that you feel this way."
Yeah,
it's a bit MacGuffin, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, I didn't really get that either. Yeah, they're doing some interesting things with this series that, to me, I'm just kind of looking at it going, I don't know about this. It's kind of throwing me. One thing I wanted to ask you, Zach, do you think, let me back up a little bit. What we saw was Van Helsing coming up with his final prototype, I guess, of the serum that he's been working on to get Dracula's weakness to the sun taken care of. Apparently only could last for a few brief minutes. Now, do you think that Grayson convinced the chairman or the board there? Do you think that he convinced them that he's not a vampire? Because they'd been suspecting him. They've been talking to Lady Jane about it. They've been saying, we think Grayson is a vampire. I'm not sure how they first came to that suspicion, but do you think Grayson convinced them or not?
I think the suspicions came from like just the little things building and just things coming, and the guy's just suspicious of like, I mean, like he said, so many of his enemies come to such interesting death. And for convincing, I think he did on some level. They wouldn't even suspect that a vampire could walk in sunlight. Whether or not they're going to change their, like, make them suspicious again and maybe have someone find out. But I think for now he did convince them, like for at least for a few episodes.
They didn't look really happy about the way the meeting went and the way he rushed off, though. They were kind of saying, wait a minute, you can't just leave so quickly. We have a lot more to talk about. And he's like, yeah, bye. My face is melting, so see ya.
Well, I'm pretty sure the guy that is pretty much the head of the order in this, Lord, what's his name? The guy with
Lord.
Yeah, the Lord, who's the head of the. I think he's the only member of the order. Well, he's one of the. I don't think everyone there is a member of the order, right? It's just him and maybe a couple other guys.
It's hard to say. I'm not sure who is and who isn't. I think they're definitely all kind of in league with each other because the order has those investments in the oil industry, and this is like the board of directors for the company or the stockholders or shareholders or whatever. So I'm not sure if every one of them is like a sworn member of the order, but they're definitely all on the same agenda, whether or not they know all aspects of the agenda.
I don't think they would suspect that a vampire could have any way to walk in daylight. I don't know how they're going to expand on that, but I think for now he's convinced.
Okay. I still don't think that they completely trust or completely like him, though.
Oh, of course not.
So for now, I guess they're gonna let him walk.
What I'm looking forward to is when Lady J, because it's going to happen in the show eventually. I don't know when. Like, it could be next season or even third season. Like, when J finds out that she has been tricked this whole time and he is a vampire.
Well, one of them is going to die, and it's obviously going to be Lady Jane.
There's so many, like, they could even spare her and, like, she becomes an enemy of both him and the Order, or the Order tries to kill her and she's forced into Dracula's camp.
Or she becomes a vampire.
Now, we've seen some magic in this series. Do we think we're going to see any other supernatural elements? Any other monsters even?
Let's see. I don't think we're going to see any other classic monsters. I don't think you're going to see a Wolfman. I don't think you're going to see Frankenstein. In the book, you've got the fact that he commands wolves and bats and rats and he can turn himself into, mist or a mass of rats or something. He can do a bunch of crazy things like that, and I don't think I don't get the sense that we're going to see much of that in this adaptation. It doesn't seem to be. They seem to kind of pick and choose which aspects of the vampire we want to play off of and which ones we want to just kind of not really have be a factor. One thing is, Dracula uses mirrors in this adaptation, right? He's looked at himself in the mirror before, right?
Yeah, I think so. I was just thinking I'd have to look back to double check, but I think they've kind of avoided it, really. I don't know if he's actually just looking in the mirror and checking himself out. But I'm kind of glad, because, you know what? I've never liked that part of the legend, like the idea of vampires not having reflection. I always thought that was kind of weird.
What's not to like about it?
Well, it's just, I don't know. Like, I guess if you're going in for the mystical thing, you could say because they have no soul, they have no reflection. I know it's weird because I'm talking about science in a vampire story, but just like if they're there, they'd have a reflection. But
yeah, but if you want to talk complete logic, it's like if they're alive, then how are they not heart beating? And
yeah,
but
I
if
know.
they're
It's
dead,
just
then
a nitpick, really.
That's what the book calls undead, and so it's kind of like that conundrum of how does this happen? How is this it's like a miracle, but in like a bad one. It's like a
Yeah.
cursed thing. So,
Right.
there's a supernatural aspect to it too. Science does play a role in it, but faith also does as well. And so there's kind of like contradictions of what we know to be completely scientific naturalism.
And we
And
still know like we don't know how many of the classic weaknesses. Like we know he can't do sunlight. We know obviously decapitation works. But I wonder, do you think they'll stray away from like holy water, garlic, crosses, that kind of thing?
we've seen a crucifix a time or two. They're probably going to shy away from the communion wafers. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe they won't. I just feel like I don't get the sense that these huntsmen are overly religious. I think they're the kind of people that they're just going to use the tactics that they know work without really any regards to any kind of higher power or faith. Now that we talk about this, I'm pretty sure the first time we see Grayson in episode 1 in his when he's with Renfield and he's talking about coming out in a few more minutes, I think he's looking into a mirror there.
I know I'm gonna if I come back for a co-host, I will check that myself and come back and so I can make sure. Now here's something we're talking about the Order's plans and here's something after last episode I'm really confused about, and a lot of people who watch the show agree with me. They seek to punish. Oh yeah, Vlad. He is Vlad Tepes in this. They seek to punish him by turning into a supernatural creature which could kill them. Not exactly his long-term plan.
I guess that's what makes it the Dark Ages. They were kind of dim.
I don't. It's like, okay, we're gonna punish our enemy by making him super strong, near unkillable. How is this a good plan?
Grayson or Dracula really is kind of like a really interesting, apparently, even within this series, he's an interesting vampire because weren't those members of the Order of Jane and them saying, vampires aren't like usually, business people. They're just kind of dark, shadowy people
Right.
who, they only crave one thing. And that's, kind of my understanding of a vampire. Although Dracula, even in the book, is a very sophisticated vampire. He's still only interested in one thing. He doesn't care about business and corruption of this and that. He just everything he does is just trying to feed his lust for blood. But the point is, of this particular show, it looks like Dracula is very multifaceted. And while he does, crave that blood, he's got, so many other things going on around him that he's occupied with, and so many, little missions that he's on. So I don't think they saw that coming, that the Order, when they turned him into a vampire. I think a vampire, for the most part, is supposed to just kind of be a relatively kind of wretched and miserable creature. Dracula, a little more sophisticated than the normal ones, but there's no, like, happy vampires that are, like, satisfied with their quote-unquote lives, Really, it really is a curse. Objectively, you'd rather be dead than be a vampire. Now, when you are a vampire, you're under this curse and you seek to prolong your well-being as a vampire. But it's not something that you're ever like enjoying life, you know what I mean, or enjoying being undead.
I've gone back and forth, and I'm curious of your opinion. Do you think this version of Dracula counts as an anti-hero?
How are you defining anti-hero?
Well, that's the thing. Like, anti-hero is a very fine line. Some people say anti-hero just means a good guy that is willing to do anything, like kill and stuff. But some people say, oh, it's just someone who's not particular. Like, how would you define him? Like, in this, like,
are you talking about like a villain that you root for? Is that what you mean?
Oh yeah. Would you say that's how he counts? Like, how would you classify him as this?
This, and really a lot of the Dracula adaptations, are trying to portray him as that. And it's all about how they develop him and about how much they show you of his agenda and why he's doing what he's doing. And sometimes they'll throw you a bone by showing you some like noble thing that he does. You'll notice that like when Jonathan and Mina are having an argument, he'll come in and like take the high road, which makes as the viewer you think, oh, this Dracula's he's got some nobility to him. He's not just a douche. He's like, he took the high road. I respect him for that. Maybe he ought to be with Mina if he loves her so much. And so little things like that the show does to your mind as a viewer, which makes you think, I kind of like this guy. I hope he has success. I hope he brings down this order. I hope he gets the girl of his dreams. I hope he does well. So the show kind of presents it to you as such. Now, me knowing Dracula, and the way he's presented in the book, I can't get into that because to me, Dracula, there's absolutely nothing noble about him. There's never any high road that he ever takes. And so I can't get into that, but I can tell that's what the show is trying to get you as the viewer to do. The show wants you to kind of be conflicted and have this whole like Team Jonathan, Team Dracula thing with Mina, and the show doesn't want you to like these Order of Dragon, and so the show is trying to present Dracula as an anti-hero, as you suggest. Now, my classic anti-hero that I'm into is Phantom of the Opera. I am total Phantom fan. A couple differences, if you want to know, between Phantom of the Opera and Dracula. A, Phantom's human, not some kind of demon apparition, cursed undead thing. Two, Phantom is actually capable of love and does love Christine, and so that's why I'm a Phantom fan and not a Dracula fan. But good question. I definitely think that the show is trying to set you up to like Dracula and to really root for him in a lot of ways.
We want to talk about what's evil that he's not. I think really he's only evil when he feeds, and that might be what they were going to address in the next episode when he says, "I'm not going to feed again."
Now, was that a scene that NBC showed in the upcoming scenes?
Yeah, in the next
episode. I watched it on Hulu, so I didn't get a chance to see that. Can you explain? It said he's not going to feed again.
I think he wants to be more like he said he's not good anymore.
Okay, well, there we go again with the whole Edward shtick. He doesn't feed on humans, only animals. And it's like, oh, well, good for you. You're so noble now. So, again, they're trying to do that to us to make us respect him. Oh, look, he's suppressing his urges. Let's give him a break. Let's root for him. I'm still not buying it. And because he's not – Dracula isn't evil. And this goes for anyone who's evil. Nobody's evil because of what they do. They're evil because of what and who they are, and it's their deeds that follow them. So I can't root for Dracula because he's trying to suppress his urges. I have to be opposed to him as an idea and as a character because of who he is. So does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, but I've always found that interesting about the vampire aspect because, because I've given blood and I've given a if he found someone to give, you could give enough blood without feeding, and a vampire could survive if you just drained it.
Oh, you mean if somebody donated blood to Dracula?
Yeah, like a familiar kind of thing.
I'm not sure if it would be satisfying as a vampire to just have a cup of blood that somebody donated to you versus actually biting someone.
Right.
I feel like that'd be akin to having food injected into your stomach without eating it, and you'd feel kind of well, this sucks, That's the sense I get. That was never addressed in the book or really anywhere that I know of, but that's an interesting idea. But I get the sense that if you're a vampire, that would just be kind of sucky. Pun.
I've actually heard one person describe this Dracula as the Steve Jobs of the Victorian age.
Yeah, with the entrepreneurial thing, I suppose that could be said. He seems like he's really taking care of the competition. He's definitely he's got a lot of showmanship in his presentation, so I suppose that's not completely inaccurate. Maybe he'll maybe he'll come up with the next iPad, or better yet, he'll come up with Victorian's Secret.
Wow! If anyone can do it says this one's for the outcasts, I definitely think Dracula knows about that.
Yeah.
Now I think we should talk about one thing from this episode we definitely got to address. And Helsing was ready to kill Mina.
Oh, that was really risky business because Mina was poking around apparently where she didn't belong. Van Helsing was very quick to just be like, you know what, get out of here. I don't need you anymore. You're fired.
Now, I find funny about that is she's I don't need you anymore. She's all surprised. It's no, you're stealing from him and invading his privacy. You should be fired.
Yeah, but he didn't know all that. He just saw her, oh, you're in this room, you're fired. It was just kind of he didn't even get much of an explanation from her at all. It was just kind of, he said, what are you doing here? And she stammered it for a second, and he's just you know what? I no longer have need of you. Just go. And I was kind of for all the work that she put in, for all the hard work that she demonstrated and assistance that she did provide, I felt like that was really quick to just not even allow her to have an explanation. I just thought that was kind of iffy. Van Helsing's kind of been a tricky character to read in this particular series. And this has been I think the only series that I know of where Van Helsing is working with Dracula rather than at odds with him. So kind of a weird dynamic going on in this season series with Van Helsing.
I wonder how long it's going to be till they really go at odds. Like, imagine what Dracula would have done. He knew how close Van Helsing came to killing her.
Yeah, and he had his crazy hammer mallet that he smashed those other people's faces in earlier in the season. And I was like, are you really going to smash her head with that hammer, Van Helsing? That's kind of messed up. But what exactly was Van Helsing working on there? Because she injected that rat with that.
Yeah, there's a vampire rat, and that was just completely passed over. Well, I don't know if the rat's going to become a vampire.
Now, is that what that was, though? Those cells? Do we know what that is?
Well, that was Dracula's blood, wasn't it?
I don't remember how that ended up there. Is that Dracula's blood?
I thought that's what it was.
Huh.
It's not really well explained exactly, and of course we see after she injects it into the rat, the rat twitches. So I don't know if that's going to be readdressed, because if that's enough to turn into a vampire, there's now a vampire rat running around.
Or just twitching around.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see something of that in the next episode. Maybe Van Helsing will go back into his lab and there's an evil rat. Well, Zach, do we have anything else we want to talk about with this particular episode, or anything else in the vampire world?
I hope they improve on Lucy's character, because and the actress seems really good too.
Yeah, she does, and I've been saying I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do with her, but apparently she's just going to be our resident lesbian. I mean, I don't know.
That's what she is at the moment. It really is. That's the best way to put it. They're underusing her.
Yeah, they are. I was actually hoping to see Dracula preying on Lucy, and we haven't been seeing that. That's what happened in the book. That's what happened in Francis Ford Coppola.
They haven't even. I think they've barely said like 3 words to each other.
Yeah, there seems to be really nothing between Lucy and Dracula. So I guess she's just going to be there for our homosexual fan base. I don't know.
Well, if they're just doing that to get the homosexual community, they better improve on their character, because if anyone's sick of one-dimensional portrayals, it's the homosexual community.
Yeah, but then does this whole thing turn into Brokeback Mountain?
This is what I'm saying. It's either one or the other. Either they go. It's just not. I don't know. I mean, see, I don't mind them addressing, because obviously there were people. I keep thinking of the old story about Queen Victoria when she was writing the laws saying that men couldn't do that with men. One of her attendants says, "But my lady, this law says nothing about women," and she just looked and go, "What do you mean women don't do that?" That really happened. That's a quote.
Oh, how the turntables!
I don't mind them addressing it, because 100 years ago, no one would have thought to bring this up, but today you can address it, and it is believable that some of this would have happened back then.
Yeah, I suppose so. I just feel like, I think the way that you put it earlier was that it felt forced. It feels like they're doing this because they can,
right?
And that there's a there's a gap in the marketplace of ideas and the marketplace of Hollywood television for that kind of discussion to take place. So I feel like they're throwing it in just because they feel like, oh, we need to like take on homosexuality, rather than just kind of go, okay, is there a reason to do this from the literary standpoint? So that's why I feel a little bit uncomfortable with it.
It's weird, because when they did it with that member of the Order, I liked how they did it with him.
With who?
The one who killed himself rather than...
right, yeah.
I mean, I liked that storyline. I thought that is complete. Like, back then, someone would kill themselves instead of anyone finding out they were gay. They'd rather be considered a traitor than gay. So that I didn't mind, but it's weird because it's such good writing but when it comes to Lucy, it's just so one-dimensional and forced.
Right, yeah. And I just don't think it belongs. And I mean, part of me is saying that because I know Lucy from the book, but I don't know. It just seemed kind of like, I don't know about this.
I completely agree with you.
Well, hey, Zach, it's been a good talk with you. We'll see what happens next week, but I had a good chat with you. And I'd like to hear from any of our listeners. Do we like this back and forth between, me and Zach, or would you rather just have it be like a one-person show? I mean, I really would like to hear from you about that. You can find this podcast on Facebook, the Dracula Podcast with Frank Stella. We're also on iTunes. You can leave a comment there. Send me an email at draculapodcast@gmail.com or find me on Twitter at Dracula Podcast. Zach, do you have anything else to say, or any last words?
Well, I'll just get connected with the Southgate Media, and we'll be doing the Sleepy Hollow podcast this week, so that's going to be awesome too. Dawn's coming with me. She came over with me for the Sleepy Hollow podcast, and you can find me on Facebook, Zachary Hare. Hey, send me a message, add me, I don't mind. And of course, you can find me on Twitter, Inch of Madness. Now, if Frank or the fans want to keep me going, I guess that remains to be seen. But until then, I will listen to the children of the night.
Oh, I like that. Zach, what are we calling the Sleepy Hollow podcast? Is it called Headless? Headless, is that it?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll have to watch out for that. You can find all that at southgatemedia.com, right? Or
Yep.
southgatemediagroup.com.
Okay.
I'll tell you.
I find it.
Yeah, just Google Southgate Media Group. You can find all the great podcasts that Rob is in charge of.
We one for Elementary maybe coming up too.
Elementary?
Mm-hmm.
Elementary, my dear Watson. Well, this podcast is a production of the Southgate Media Group. I'm Frank Stella.
And I'm Zachary Hare.
Good night, my friends.